because more and more artists are trying to get out of their deals now that they see NFTs, and more artists are trying to figure out, how NFTs could really create their own labels or create their own ecosystems, et cetera, et cetera. So what I think labels are going to have to figure out is like if they're going to become more so agencies of marketing or, something else. Because right now, the biggest thing that you're going to receive out of a record label deal, I think, is marketing in comparison to anything else. Everything else, I think you could pretty much do yourself.
Matt, what's good?
Just trying to keep up, Sam. Another wild month in the NFT space going into February strong.
That's right. Well, we've got a very special guest lined up today, Latasha. Latasha is an incredibly talented human being. She's been a musician for over 10 years. And as the Web3 space has opened up opportunities to help musicians prosper, she's been very much at the forefront of this movement. She released a music video NFT of her song GOGO WYNE that sold for 13 ETH, which is effectively $50,000, give or take, USD. The equivalent of what would effectively be a advance for an emerging artist, yet she's been able to retain ownership and lead that forward. Beyond her career as a musician and pioneering what it means to be a musician in the Web3 landscape, she's also the head of community programming at Zora and doing incredible things like their program Zoratopia. Lastly, she's also a partner and founding Tia, as she puts it, for HERSTORYDAO. So really excited because in this episode, we dive into all things music, NFTs, and community building. What stood out to you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think she is going to be remembered as a pioneer of the music video NFT, like that art form. It's been amazing to see the traction and success that she's had with, these immaculately produced full-length music videos as NFTs. And I love hearing her rationale behind her love of the art form and the way she thinks about the video as being on equal footing to the song itself. I love that that's, something that NFT makes possible with the creative canvas that its medium offers. And I just love her thoughts on community building. I thought that they come from a place of inclusion and authenticity, and I thought it was just like pure gold for anyone in the space who's looking to go into a community-oriented role.
Yeah, 1,000%. Well, lots of fun stuff to cover. One last thing before we dive in, but if you haven't already, do want to encourage you to check out our newsletter. Every week, we simplify all the things that are happening in the NFT market into an actionable digest so you can get involved in the space. So just check that out at nftnow.com. But without any further ado, Latasha. Latasha, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm really good. How are you guys?
Fantastic. Very excited to have you on. I think for starters, it would be great, and I know we'll dive deep into a lot of things Web3, but just to kind of talk us through your journey as a musician and what really kind of sent you down into the rabbit hole of Web3.
Sure. It's a long journey, but I'll try to keep it short. I've been making music for about 10 years. It started out, I had a partner who was murdered by gun violence. And he always was really into hip hop and poetry and used to really push me to write poetry. So in order to heal, I wrote a lot of poetry as a youth, and like from my 15s to my 20s, I was writing poetry. And then I went to Wesleyan University where I studied hip hop, psychology, Black psychology, and then Black studies. And there I was writing plays about hip hop and my journey with it and how I felt as a woman being a part of hip hop. I thought I was going to do the Broadway thing, but that didn't happen. Ended up going to a lot of the like ciphers and poetry slams in Brooklyn at the time and was just like, riffing everywhere I went. And then one day somebody was like, yo, you can actually really spit. Come through the studio. Let's like just record some things. Shout out to Science who started that out with me. And I made my first mixtape and that went viral. And then before I knew it, I was opening for like Kanye and Q-Tip and Big Sean and Nipsey Hussle and all these crazy rappers. And I knew nothing about the music industry. I just knew people wanted me to perform. People really loved my energy and what I was offering. But started to meet some of the music industry in that journey and realized that the space really wasn't resonating with my spirit. A lot of it was, gatekeepy. A lot of it was keeping me in a box. A lot of it was trying to transform me as a woman. I dealt with everything from people trying to give me diet pills to, trying to change my voice. And I realized, like, yeah, this isn't for me. So I took some time off, and also went through kind of a like depressive spiral and just, didn't know who I was for a bit. But then someone heard one of my songs called Black Magic, and she bestowed me $10,000, and was like, yo, you got to do this music thing. You can't work a 9 to 5. And by the way, I was working at a financial firm at the time as well. So this all kind of comes full circle. So from 2016 to 2020, I was forging through independence. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this independently. If Hove could do it, I could do it too. And so did everything from performance art to, selling my own little mixtapes at shows to, anything that would keep me away from having to sign a deal. Moved to LA with my partner, Angel. Well, Ja is my partner, and then my two best friends, Angel and T. And we just started really building content and music videos. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh, Lord, what are we going to do? And my partner came in the room one day and was like, yo, you ever heard of NFTs? And I was like, nah. And I didn't believe it. I was all skeptical. I was like, nah, something's wrong with this. Like, what about the copyright? Like, somebody going to take my stuff, like all that stuff. But then learned heavily about the blockchain and how transparent and secure it gave, the security it gave to artists. And I was like, all right, this might be a channel for me. And I minted my first piece in February at Zora, and it sold in 3 minutes, and I freaked out.
I love that. And shout out to the poetry background. I also was a poetry kid growing up. So
hey,
yeah.
You know what's up?
I do. Also found my way into music. So I love some of the parallels there. One thing I think is really cool, like, as a multidisciplinary creative, someone who's been creative on multiple formats, what excites you the most about like NFTs and Web3?
Yeah, I think what excites me the most is the multifacetedness of NFTs, right? Like I could do anything I want with NFTs, and it allows me to really show all of my scapes, right? Like I love to make music, obviously, and that's my core, but I also love photography. I love musing. I love making these incredible music videos. I love doing all of this. And so NFTs, how they're built, allows you to kind of make anything out of this space. And I mean, even more, right? Because now I could tokenize and have performances for you guys and do all other things too. So I really love NFTs, and I think it's the way.
I love that. And then I'm curious too, because I obviously like GOGO WYNE, when that sold for like 13 ETH, which is like 50K USD. Like,
Yeah.
what was that feeling like? I mean, because that was a video you had already live on YouTube for a minute, right?
Yeah, it was live for about a year. And so when it sold, I firstly was like, oh my God, like I literally made what a record deal would have tried to give me, like a small independent record deal would have tried to give me, with just one music video, with one song. And I remember when we made this song and made the music video, we like made it with a publishing label, and I asked them to give us some money to like support the music video or whatever. And they didn't. And they kind of told us like, your sweat equity doesn't equate to what we're offering you. And so like most artists feeling like a slave to like a situation, I was really bummed and sad about that music video when I first had to release it. And although it vibrated and did a lot of amazing things, we really saw like energy flow back with that NFT. And it meant so much to me and the squad, because we were like, all that hard work we put in to put that music video now has some worth. And I remember when we shot it, it was during the pandemic. We shot it in my garage and in my house, and we gutted the house. We took like all the things out of the house and blocked out everything and just made this video. And people loved the video. And it really gave me a rebirth too. It made me feel like I was reborn in my music. The pandemic also made me have a lot of strain with my music and not love it as much anymore. And I really feel like with NFTs, I've fallen in love with my art again.
I love that. I love that. And I love the video, by the way. I've probably
Thank
played it
you.
like 35 times, you know what I mean? And then shout out to Jesse Grushak, who owns the video, the NFT,
Jesse!
and also has been a guest on the show
Oh, dope. I love
previously. We,
Jesse.
we love Jesse. But I was blown away when I saw the video, because it was so clear how much like thought and like effort you had put into it. It's like such a the video in itself. It's not like, oh, I need a visual for this song. The video is the art form as much as the song itself is.
Exactly.
And I love that. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts too, because I know that was very intentional on your part. Like just like how you kind of like, as a creative, when you find out about NFTs, it can actually be like overwhelming in a good way. You're like, I don't even know where to start. Like, is it poetry? Is it music? Is it audio?
Right.
Is it videos? Like, how do I maximize this? And I'd love to hear a little bit about how you kind of like settled on like the music video, like this highly polished, really thoughtful, like really well, immaculately done music video as the final piece of art, and what it was like to see that succeed.
Yeah, I mean, we were releasing music videos as NFTs since February. Like my first NFT was a music video. And I remember that day, Jacob was like, oh, this is one of the first music videos on like blockchain right now. And then was also like, oh, and I've also found out I was like the first woman rapper on blockchain at the time. And I was like, oh, this is crazy. And so I was like, let me continue that walk and see what happens. So I released that music video, then I would release some poetry, then I released some other stuff in between. And then we went back to music video in May with Mactiverse, which is now in the secondary market for $5 million, which is crazy to me, which is also amazing. And then when we did GOGO WYNE, I was like, okay, this means that this is working. Like something here, I think people are understanding that music videos have a different type of channel that's beyond just the music, right? Like with music videos, you're getting the performance, you're getting the muse, you're getting the artist, you're getting all of these different aspects, of course, in the music, and then the set design, et cetera, et cetera. It's a multifaceted piece. So I think music videos are so crucial. And for myself, I feel like music videos also really allow me to see my like self-discovery through my years, right? I really get to see how I've grown, how I've transcended, how I've changed. And I like to bring people on that journey with me. And so through the NFT space, I've really been doing that and showing people like how I level up or who I was in the past and how, to connect with all of these parts of me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And I think too, I mean, it's interesting because in the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned that you kind of pre-Web3 set out towards this path of like being a independent artist. And then with this video, you sold for what you also mentioned was effectively the equivalent of an advance for an artist, except you're retaining full ownership. How do you feel NFTs and Web3 enable a more prosperous model for independent artists?
I think this allows for artists to really create their own ecosystems and sense of control, right? In the past with the music industry, we didn't get all the transparency or the back end. We couldn't see what our numbers were except for what Spotify and not even Tidal. Tidal doesn't even hardly show you your numbers, but Spotify and Apple show. And with NFTs, the beauty is like I could see my worth and I could see my leverage now. So if I go to a label, I could say, hey, I made 50K off this music video. So what are you guys really telling me, And I think that's powerful. I think for a long time, we've misvalued music. We've really told people that music was, supposed to be a point, I don't know, some insane number that came all the way back from like the 1920s. We're literally still living the same contracts of the beginning of the music industry. That's a problem. And now as music, transcends in TikTok and Instagram and finds different ways to live and embody people, right? We have to give it back its value. And so I'm really excited for artists, especially musicians, to see their value and their worth come back. And also, this is like a cultural metric, right? Like NFTs allow you to see like the worth of the culture that these artists are creating and the communities that these artists are creating. So it's like so beyond and there's so many layers, but I could talk about this all day.
I love it. I love it. And it's always interesting to see, like, you know, with different like kind of pioneers in the space have always kind of like flipped the script, and then like obviously the traditional music industry has responded, like, you know, with what Blau did, you know, at the beginning
Hmm.
of last year, and then you saw like a lot more like musicians rushing into like, you know, the visual and the music and like the Nifty
Hmm.
Gateway and like all that. And I'm curious to get your thoughts, like now that you've kind of like planted this flag and been like music videos have value like in this
Hmm.
form, like how do you think what do you think the future of music video NFTs will look like?
I mean, I can't give all the alpha away, but I'm definitely building things out so that in the near future, music video has a real home again. I grew up in the age of MTVs and BETs, and those were really important channels for me because I feel like they allowed me to become the artist that I am now. I grew up watching Missy Elliott and Busta Rhymes music videos and wanting to create that for myself. And I think a lot of kids see music videos and are like, I want to do that too. I want to be like them. And now with the world that we're in, MTV doesn't even show music videos anymore. We're watching like Ridiculous all day or whatever, right? Teen Mom. And I'm like, what about that art form again? What about bringing that art form back? And so I've been really thinking about a platform that will really give worth in a different way than the regular marketplace. I'm thinking about the TRLs coming back. I'm thinking about the 106 in Parks coming back, and these really monumental cultural moments for us. That were like the whole community got to engage with these music videos. And I'm excited to bring that back because I think it's a really important aspect to growing up. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
so much to say about this too.
I love that. I love that. And then I'll even think for one sec too, just abstract to a high level, whether it's a music video NFT, just a music NFT. Obviously, there's a lot of value in creating utility along with the NFTs, giving fans, communities access to music before it's been released. And in certain instances, we're seeing lots of we're seeing platforms like Royal emerge, where you're actually getting a cut of the royalty generated off of traditional DSPs.
Hmm.
But there's kind of like, you can argue both sides, and there's pros and cons and no right answer here. But like,
Yeah.
does the music NFT need to have utility, or is there like merit for music NFTs in it of themselves just by way of actually collecting the art? Like, where do you sit? What do you think?
I think it's about the intention of the artist, to be honest. Like, if the artist decides intentionally that they want to create a utility towards the music, I absolutely go for it. But I also feel that music in itself is a utility. I feel like music is a meditation form, is an ability to inspire, it empowers, it does a whole lot of things than just being background for the restaurant, right? Like, it's a lot more. And I think about like artists like Kendrick Lamar or artists like myself, J. Cole, et cetera, how our music really transformed culture. Like, we gonna be all right. Imagine if that was an NFT. Like, that is insanity, because that music became the song of activism, right? And like, that's what music does. It activates people. And so to me, it doesn't always need a utility. It's just enough to just stand on its own. But because we live in this, world that people are like, I don't see the worth in music still, people do have that choice to give a utility, and I'm not against it. But I always want people to remember that music has so much more value.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you have a really interesting insight into this as well, because in addition to everything you're doing in the music space, you're also leading community programming at Zora.
Hmm.
Tell us a bit, so you have a real insight and a look into community building and also like creating utility around the platform, around protocols, et cetera. Just love to hear a little bit about that role, and then also like how
Yeah.
that kind of interfaces with your music career, how you balance it all. And
Yeah, I'm head of community programming at Zora now, which is so amazing. I adored Zora from the day that I got into NFTs because they really spoke to my ethos on autonomy and sovereignty and building with your community, right? So when I got in, I got to really see what community was looking for and also channel community into thinking different, right? I didn't want community to look like the same, Board Ape project as community. I wanted community to look like real human beings just allowing themselves to be themselves. And so I built out Zoratopia, which started out as an educational front to just teach people how to get onto Web3 and sell their NFTs and mint. And it's a free class. And I'm so grateful that we started that because we've onboarded over 500 artists now. And along with that, I get to throw these amazing IRL events, and the artists come through and they perform and they see everybody that they've been talking to on Twitter and connect. And like, it's just a real true vibe. And it's a diverse vibe too, right? Like a lot of times we're finding in these spaces, it's primarily white male. And we're like, where is everybody else? And so I wanted to create the safest of spaces that we can. You know, we're still dealing with a lot of tact in the space, of course, but the safest of spaces for marginalized communities to feel like they have a home in Web3. And so Zoratopia really started out for that. But, you know, beyond that, I'm getting to see artists find their own way. You know, through Zoratopia, I watched homies like Iman Europe start working for Sound XYZ, and she was onboarded through Zoratopia, and like Sassy Black now creating community for Arpeggio Labs. And it's just so beautiful to witness people figure this out on their own and like take the same model that we've built through Zora and kind of move that forward. And as for my music career with Zora, Zora is so supportive of my music career, which is so great. It's the first time I've worked for a company that was like, go for it, do it, like get it done, you know? And they have always shown love to everything that I create. So I'm so grateful to just have like them as a family as well.
Absolutely. I love that. No, it's been amazing to see the community you've built with Zora, but also obviously the community you've built around yourself as an artist and creator and community builder. I know you alluded towards the notion of really trying to be intentional around creating a diverse space within the community. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think on our side, like we're deeply inspired about how NFTs as technology can bring power back to creators of culture that have historically been exploited, marginalized, but it's definitely not necessarily something that's going to solve itself. So I'm curious from your perspective for like our listeners that are builders, that are engaging in the space. Like, I think this is very much like a shared responsibility for everybody involved. And as somebody like yourself that's at the forefront of building community, like what advice or what things do people need to be conscious of? And more importantly, what actions can we collectively take in order to actualize this potential?
So what I often say is that we want to make sure that when we're inviting or we're at an event or engaging any form of community activities, that the room doesn't look just like you. Everyone has to have a different take in life, and even thought, I think, is really important. Different kind of thought leaders in the space is really, really important. Because what we're dealing with right now is that people only want to highlight Black artists on Black History Month or on important events to look like they are filling their diversity metric. And that is a problem. Right now, what we need is for people to be showing up at all times, because what's going to happen if we continue to have the same people building the same infrastructures is we're going to have Web 2 all over again. And so I really imagine that Web 3 is the place that everybody has a seat at the table and people support other people building their seats at their table. And I just want to see a world, I'm very optimistic about this, but I want to see a world where people are really thinking about diversity first and really thinking about how can I connect with people that don't think like me or don't look like me.
Love that. I love that. Fully agreed. You know, I think the concept of community gets, it gets a lot of play in the NFT space. It's become a buzzword of sorts, but, there's a lot more to unpack there, and as to what really defines real community and what are like principles for like actually like effectively programming and building communities. And so like, since you've been doing that not only for your music career, but also on Zora side and also for the space at large in terms of the education role of Zoratopia, like what are your thoughts on that? Like what are your sort of principles for like effectively programming communities?
I think my principles is one, bringing on artists that are honest. and creatives and developers that are honest, right? That see the world for what it is and also want to change things, right? So those are like my favorite kind of peeps, the peeps that want to change stuff and who really come through with the honest tip. Those are the ones you want to keep around. Then I also think about the folks who understand resource and understand how to get equity and understand like how to make more value out of art or, creative or et cetera. I think having those folks in the building with the thought leaders is really amazing because now they're starting to talk about the actual work, right? Like the actual thing that we're trying to build here is a closing of the gap for equity, and like really getting people to think differently about how to make money, mindset shifts, et cetera, et cetera. I also like to think about, I don't really like the tastemaker thing. Like, I'm not a big fan of like just putting tastemakers in a building. If tastemakers want to pull up, I'm always happy for a pull up of a tastemaker. But I think it's important that, we have folks who are like thinking about the real future, like thought about everything that is going on, not just like the good or the bad, just like everything that's going on and are thinking about how to like better. Those are the people I want to be around all the time. And those are the people I try to be around all the time, But there's so many aspects to community, right? Like we're dealing with just the floodgates opening for NFTs at this moment. So the question is like, for me often is, am I ready for that? Do I want the floodgates to be open? Do I want everyone in here? And I don't think I do just yet. Because as soon as we start to open this whole gate up, that's when the problems start to show up. That's when we'll see even more racism than we've already seen in the space. That's when we'll see more, discrimination, all kinds of fronts in this space. And I've had this conversation a lot with like my trans friends about like what they're dealing with within the space and how, especially with the PFP projects and things like that, like how that affects them. And I really am an advocate of bringing more of the LGBTQIA plus community into every conversation. Like they have to be in every conversation. And yeah, I just have so many things with this community because I grew up not wanting community, like thinking like that's a bad word in the hood, right? Like we didn't care for community. It was just fam. That's what we called it. And so to hear it now, I'm thinking about it in the way of like, everybody has to have a different background and story to really be seen as community, I hope that answered your question. So many thoughts in this one too.
No, very well.
You
very
guys are asking the good questions here, though. I gotta
That's
say,
what we do.
That's
what we do.
Not here to play around.
I appreciate it.
With that said, too, I think, and I absolutely love that as it pertains to community. And Matt, I'll steal Matt's quote, but he speaks about the fact too, just the notion of like Web 2 versus Web 3, whereas Web 2 is all about building audience. Web 3 really is about building community. And to your point of ensuring that there's diverse perspectives and not even, diverse in all different potential definitions of the word, walks of life, different realms of art that people are creating. I think it just enables a level of intellectual sparring that enables us to collectively push the space forward faster.
Exactly.
So I love that. When it comes to Zora, right now. Thank you. Not my first podcast. In that vein, I would love to just on the Zora front. Zora is an incredible platform. There is an incredible community. From your perspective, what makes Zora as a marketplace unique?
Oh man, so many parts, but my favorite 3 is one, there's no commission, right? So we don't take any commission from the artist. They get full, their full amount to them straight through. That's 1. 2, of course, I love that they take large file sizes so I could put my whole music video in there and not have to worry about the gamble that I would with another platform. 3, we just moved into V3. So now we have our buy now and we have a lot of new things coming up that I can't say and I wish I could say, but it's nice to know that Zora has everything living on it now. So it's an aggregator, just like an OpenSea, but you also get instant royalty. So you won't have to worry about the things that you used to worry about with like an OpenSea, et cetera, et cetera. And then the actual team is so dope. It's actually really diverse. You know, the CEO is a Black man, D. Goins, who is like my fam, and, you know, Yana and Lily and all the marketing team is all like women. A lot of them are women. And it's just, we're also in like 7 different countries right now. So it's kind of nuts working together, but we make it happen. And I think that's what I love about Zora the most. And also the fact that Zora listens. Like, I don't think all marketplaces listen, and I don't think all protocols listen to what the people actually want. Zora takes the time to listen. And every time I've come to them with a complaint from the community or like a thought from the community, they've taken the time to figure out some sort of infrastructure to support what the community is looking for. And that to me is really key. You know, I've tried to, when I was first starting, I would try to like catch up with, you know, different marketplaces and figure out what I could help with. And I didn't always get heard. And Zora was like the first time that people actually were listening to me.
I love that. I love that. You know, it's really great too that you're on the front lines, you know, educating people, bringing new people into the space. It's very much in keeping with the mission of NFT Now, which is, you know, obviously empowering the creators of culture, but also helping drive mainstream adoption of NFTs. And so, you know, we really see that as a responsibility to help educate, you know, the people who are coming in and make sure that they don't fall victim to scams. They enter the right way. They really understand what they're entering. And so I'd just love to hear a little bit about your experience and any takeaways, like anecdotes or like things that you're kind of seeing or trends in terms of new people coming into the space. Like, what are they asking? What do they care about? What do they maybe not care about? Like decentralization and other things that have obviously been really important, you know, in like kind of paving the way for the space. So just curious to hear your observations.
Well, you know, a lot of them are coming in for the cash grab, which is a problem in itself, right? And every time I've onboarded, you know, a celebrity or somebody of that vein, I always tell them, you're not going to win if you don't think about community. You're not going to win if you don't connect with the other artists or people in the space. You're not going to win. You might win some money, but you're not going to win the total experience of what Web3 could really offer you, right? And I think that to me is really crucial and what I push for in every conversation I'm having with mainstream culture, et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, I don't know if I'm ready for everybody to be in the space just yet because we still got some things to clean up and work through just as humans. We just all have things we're working through right now. And for the most part, what I tell people to do before they get into NFTs is get their alignment with themselves right. I always am big on like spiritual alignment, getting your mind right, your everything right before you get into this space, because this space could really channel some demons that you don't want it to channel. And so you got to be powerful enough with yourself to know how to walk this. It's because we're dealing with, you know, money, and not that money is an evil. I do not think that, but I think money really shows who people are. And I think it's important when you get into this space to really be ready for that abundance in the right way, and think about the ways that you could share abundance. Think about the ways that you could create more abundance for others. Think about the ways that you're creating abundance for yourself and making wellness for yourself, and how that could be a blueprint for others as well. So those are the things I think about often. And then as for celebrities, I often just am like, just become a collector. I'm always like, become a collector, you know, show up for these other artists. That's going to make you even doper when you create your own project. Like, people are going to really be like, word, you know, Jadena just bought one of my NFTs. I got to show up for Jadena when they got their project dropping, you know? So like, that's how you do it. You level the playing field that way. And I think that's more important right now.
I love that. I love that for sure. And then, I mean, too, like as for you as a, and I mean, it's amazing because given the fact you get exposure on all these projects, then you're also obviously testing and really kind of like breaking trail and setting new precedents for what it means to be a musician in this kind of Web3 era. I know there's a lot of people listening right now that are also either existing musicians, aspiring musicians that are a little intimidated and not sure how to best navigate the space. So I think I'm curious from your perspective, because do you want to make this and kind of dive tactical as far as advice for artists in Web3. But what are some of the best kind of approaches that you have as it pertains to potential drop structures for people that are getting involved, or just general best practices, whether it be utility, pricing, supply? There's all
Yeah.
these decisions. People don't know where to start.
Oh, you guys are trying to make me teach Zoratopia here. I see. Now I'll give you guys
Well,
some bullets.
they'll listen to this. They go sign up for all Zoratopia for the full story. You know where to go. Yeah, yeah.
um, So I think one, just remember this is one big experiment that we're in right now. We're all experimenting. We're all trying different things. So there's not one way to do this thing, right? When I was starting out, I priced my stuff at a certain level where I thought like, okay, I'm getting my worth for what I did and like the work I did. But I'm also getting like a little bit more for myself, right? And my wellness. And I would price it there. So sometimes I would price things lower than like a 5 ETH bid or things like that. And I just watched how things would level up as I grew my community, right? So the more NFTs I would drop, the more community I was building, the more collectors were watching what I was doing. So that taught me how to like level up my pricing. So I wouldn't come into the game off bat unless you're like ready with a 10 ETH bid. Like I wouldn't say my reserve is 10 ETH off the bat. I
Yeah.
would, start somewhere like a point 0.5 or a point or a 1 ETH, or depending on the project, even like a point 0.2 if it's like something that's lighter of energy. And that's another thing. I think knowing how much energy you put into everything is crucial because, like I always say in everything, Ethereum is an energy and we're working and playing with energy here. So think about how much energy you put into your work and then price it based on that. That's for pricing. Community. Go on Twitter and connect with every person that looks like you and then connect with everybody that doesn't look like you too and get to know people in the space. A great way to do that is like really supporting other artists. And I always tell people like, if you genuinely like how another artist works or makes, show up for them. Retweet is free. You don't have to pay for a retweet. A like is free. And just show up for these artists that are already in the space, and I'm sure they will find ways to show up for you. Come through to the community events like a Zoratopia IRL. Go to like NFT DAO events that I'm sure is coming up, and just pull up to everything and get to know people. Because I think IRL is a really special experience in comparison to just being on your Twitter all day, right? When you get IRL experience, it's like, okay, you're a real person, and I could hold empathy and compassion for you and love and support you as a person as well. At the end of the day, we are still human, even though we all got these PFPs or whatever, we're still human beings, and we got to remember that. And then as for knowing what to drop, I always tell people, think about something that feels like the fullest form of you. I had my first drop was this like tiny music video and song that I always loved performing and that I always loved to watch this visual that I had. And it was just me spinning in a chair, kind of going crazy. And it was like this intentional moment for me to release that because I felt like it spoke to how my journey in NFTs are now. Like I feel like I'm just spinning and going through all of these different emotions and vibrations in the space. And I guess like think about how your first NFT is going to manifest the rest of your journey in this thing. And of course, that's going to change and evolve and do all types of things, but that's the best way to really do this. I tell people just get out of the brand mindset, get out of the Web2 mindset, start thinking about a different kind of way to approach branding. Do not shill all over people's pages and do all of that because it's not a good vibe. But think also about how you want to be seen. like how you really want to be seen and connect with the world, because this could go way beyond just an NFT. This is really connecting with the world.
I love that. And, I think you raised some really good points as we think about, like, we are still very early here. And there's a lot of people who are still in the music space, haven't jumped into NFTs. A lot of people who are still trying to figure out how they feel about NFTs, still gathering all the information. And that's why it's disheartening to see like news like we saw this past week with the whole hit piece thing, where which I know you were very vocal about, and understandably so, because for a lot of people it made big headlines. For those who don't know, hit piece was this music NFT platform that popped up and was scraping Spotify's API and purportedly selling NFTs of artist music that had not been cleared, had not been licensed. There was no consent there, no permissions, and it feeds into this narrative that's like that makes it very easy to like have a knee-jerk negative reaction to NFTs at large, when there are actually like incredible builders in the space who are trying to build in good faith to empower creators. So just wanted to get your thoughts on that and how we kind of like educate and like combat those narratives.
Yeah, hit piece was a lot for me. It was really disheartening, just because I actually spoke to one of the people from Hit Piece prior, and they didn't tell me that this was how it was going to go. And then to also hear that they were doing it, they just did it to like create this buzz, and they expected lawsuits, was just like, oh, this looks like white privilege. Like, this is just some white male privilege right here. Just, you guys could just take lawsuits all day, whatever, no big deal. So it really bothered me heavily to witness that, because like you said, there's so many of us building and really doing the real work to really support artists, get artists what they deserve and need, and not asking for anything out of it as well, right? We're just asking for artists to be their greatest selves and giving them the permission and the control to like decide where they want things to release, how they want things to release, et cetera, et cetera. When I heard that, the founder was like, artists could just call us and we'll put down the art. I was like, what kind of nonsense is that? Like, you steal my house and then you tell me, oh yeah, you guys could just hit me up and I'll give you your house back. Like, what is this? Like, it just was so weird and problematic, because I know there's a lot of artists that still don't believe that NFTs are a good thing for them and don't see like NFTs as being supportive for the culture. But I have to say, NFTs have changed my life and have changed the lives of so many other artists as well. Like, I didn't come up from like having millions of dollars or anything like that. I, was making music videos with like $500 and figuring out how to make this happen with my homies. And I remember days when I couldn't pay my rent every month, and all the kind of things that now through NFTs I don't have to worry about anymore. And I watched that for so many different artists. So many different artists have been able to even support their families in different countries and show up for people in different ways, that I'm just like, man. And beyond that, we found like soul wellness. Like, a lot of artists feel like their mental stress that they had to deal with before is gone. Their heart stresses are gone. And they feel like they really are clearing up wounds, like money wounds that they were dealing with for a long time in their lives. And that is what excites me about this space. That's what this space is about to me. Not so much about the hype or, the social status that you gain from owning this thing. It's about the wellness that you're really creating for the world and people.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. I mean, in that vein too, because I think even with the like hit piece side, I mean, there's just, the music industry isn't inherently evil, but there are bad actors. And I know.
Are you sure? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Fact check that one.
I'm kidding.
In that vein, like, record labels historically have had a track record for exploitative practices. But on the flip side, there's also a lot of people in that industry that love music, might not be musicians, but want to work in the industry. And this creates the opportunity, and their jobs revolve around trying to help artists blow up. So like, there's the question, and the foundation there is like, do you think record labels have a place in this new Web3 world?
I just love that question. Every time anyone asks me that question, I love it. I think record labels are going to have to figure out a new form for themselves. I don't think that they're going to be able to sustain the same way that they've been sustaining, because more and more artists are trying to get out of their deals now that they see NFTs, and more artists are trying to figure out, how NFTs could really create their own labels or create their own ecosystems, et cetera, et cetera. So what I think labels are going to have to figure out is like if they're going to become more so agencies of marketing or, something else. Because right now, the biggest thing that you're going to receive out of a record label deal, I think, is marketing in comparison to anything else. Everything else, I think you could pretty much do yourself. You could get a distributor yourself. You could get people to push your work if you have community yourself. You could do a lot of different things you could book yourself. I booked myself for the last 10 years. I never had a booking agent, and I've made a lot of good money off of just performing. So, we could do this all by ourselves now. So every time I hear a label try to come to me, I'm like, what can you really offer me that I can't do by myself? And I think artists are all thinking like that right now. And so what the label is going to have to figure out is that thing that they can offer that, the artist really can't. And unfortunately, it's sad because I feel like labels take advantage of, the fact that they could get on playlists and get you on a playlist, or they could get you all the numbers for streaming. And that's the real culprit to me. I think the streaming is the culprit because that's where all the artists are just trying to focus their energies on. And sometimes the numbers are fake, sometimes they're inflated, et cetera, et cetera. And what I hope is that with NFT and music NFTs, we could create platforms that really show the grasp of how these songs are really doing. Streaming is just not it for me anymore. I talked to Halik about this, and he was just like, I didn't release one song last year on streaming. And I was like, me neither, bro. I'm so proud of us.
Love that. And I think it speaks volumes about where the art that you're making is actually being valued at the energy you're putting into it. Like you like to tie it together, like you said before, it's about that energy. Streaming is not not doing justice to that, right?
No, not at all. I think it's still important. Don't get me wrong, because I still do see a space for streaming, right? But I think when we could think of a platform that mixes the streaming model with the NFT model properly and pays properly, then we could really talk about, how this is going to move.
For sure. Well, as we kind of draw to a close, I just wanted to also give you a chance to talk about what upcoming projects you have, what you're working on, what's coming, the alpha that you can leak to us.
Yeah, just continuing to build with the community and making new projects every day and having fun. That's really where I'm at right now. Just having a good time, not allowing the space to stress me out, and just taking care. One thing we are dreaming of, and I don't know who's going to watch this and hit me up about it, but I'm going to manifest that someone hits me up. One thing that we're really dreaming of is creating a retreat center for artists and community to link up and create together. So if you're interested in those kind of vibrations, a space where we could just take some time away from the Twitters and all of the things and just get to creating, holler at me. I would love to hear from you.
Well, Latasha, you're a rock star, incredible musician, crushing it as a community builder, really setting a new precedent for how people can really prosper and break trail at the front of this industry. So thank you so much for shedding some wisdom with us today, and keep up all the great work.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Man, well, really enjoyed that conversation. Especially loved how she's focusing on onboarding people and all the different things she's doing to educate and build and foster a diverse community. And then also too, how she's at the forefront of this herself, right? As an artist, testing at the front lines, coming up, doing cool partnerships, pushing forward the whole space, creating a new industry for music video NFTs. What stood out to you, Matt?
Man, Latasha is a real one. You can tell just from talking to her, she is an incredibly important voice in the space, bringing her perspective from the music side, the community building side. as someone who wants to see NFTs reach mainstream adoption and hopes to combat misinformation around the space, I feel very fortunate. We should all feel very fortunate that we have Latasha at the forefront there, pressing forward, breaking trail, and helping build this future that we all want to see be more equitable, be more inclusive, and be more empowering when it comes to creators. So I'm very impressed by the conversation and excited to see what she does.
Exactly. Love it. Well, if you haven't already, definitely encourage you to go check out nftnow.com. You could sign up for our weekly newsletter where we simplify all the happenings in the wonderful world of NFTs so you can figure out how to best get involved. But there you have it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week.